Do you feel that in a time when we are more connected than ever, we are drifting away from real human connection, especially to ourselves? I do. Hi, I'm Leticia Latino, and I want to invite you to join me and my very inspiring guests in exploring ways to reconnect to your essence, to your definite purpose, to what makes you tick. Are you ready? Hello there, and welcome to a new episode of To Basics, Reconnecting to the Essence of You. I'm with Kate Griffiths today. She's an organizational systems coach, facilitator, author, podcast host, and co-founder of Foundation of Colors, which is a trailblazing organization that explores the profound impact of color on human consciousness, health, and well-being. As a color psychologist, her goal is to elevate color consciousness to shape a more connected and conscious society. Wow, what an intro. Hello, Kate, and welcome to
That's amazing. Well done, you.
Well, I don't think we've ever had a color psychologist on the show, so I'm about to learn some good stuff. So I'm very excited. The one thing I know is you're based in England.
Yeah.
And that's exciting. I always love when we get those multinational, multicultural guests. And you know, little PSA, our show has been downloaded on every single continent. That makes me very proud.
Wow, well done, you. That's amazing.
When people ask me, I say, we're not viral, but we've been downloaded in every single continent. And to me, that's almost more important, you know, to have reach and diversity of thoughts and diversity of guests. So I'm very excited to have you on board.
That's interesting, actually, because I don't know if you've ever been, because we both know Dennis Potoko. And so I went on the friendship bench yesterday because it was Thursday, and Phil was taking it because, you know, different people take it each week. And he was talking about representation. So this feels really aligned because he's saying how important that is.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, Dennis Pitocco, since you mentioned, let's do a little advertising for this catalyst. I've had Dennis on the show, and their mission is incredible, of united, like-minded people, and it's all about doing good in the world. So that's a little shout out for this catalyst and Dennis and his work. And that's how we connected. That's why I always say this is incredible, how the dots connect. But yeah, so Kate, tell us a little bit about, you know, where you're from. And I always interested in knowing about what were you passionate about in your young years. I know you have a very interesting journey from corporate growth to other things. So I'm always interested in following that because I feel that anybody out there that listens to this podcast, it's about getting unstuck, following your life purpose and reconnecting to your true essence. So I know your journey is all about that. So let's go to the beginning.
The very beginning. Sorry.
Actually, I like that.
Right, I'll be a bit more serious. Okay, so I think that one of the key things, and maybe where we connect, is culture is really important to me because I was very, very privileged in that my parents lived in many, many countries when I was growing up. So I went to 5 different primary schools, which is a little known fact, but it meant that I became very good at connecting with others and making friends quickly because I never knew how long we were going to be in a place. And I love people. So I kind of call myself a third culture kid because I've lived, you know, in all these different places. And even though now I live in England and I'm English, you know, by nationality, and I was actually born in London, it's taken me many years, I've lived here quite a long time now, but many years to actually call this home because I always felt quite different because I've been around, you know, people that speak different languages. I got really interested in languages. I did Spanish as part of my degree at university.
And I tested it already and it's really good for the audience.
Thank you. So, you know, here's an interesting thing. So one of my first jobs, because I don't know if it's the same in the US, but in the UK, we have what's called the milk round, and it's nothing to do with pints of milk. But it's that these big companies come and they talk about, oh, wouldn't you love a graduate career in British Telecom or PwC or whoever? And I remember going to one, I think it was BT actually, and they had horrible curly sandwiches, which were going stale. It was the most boring talk ever. And I thought, I'm not doing this. I'm a bit of a rebel, really. I think that's so I really associate quite a lot, if we think about that in colour terms, with the indigo bottle that's near the end. Because that's always the one that goes, why? Why do we have to do it this way? Just because everyone else has done something that way doesn't mean that it has to be that way forevermore. So anyway, so that's a little bit of it. And as a result of that sort of experience, I was like, I'm not doing this. And I had a friend at the time called Martin, who was Czech, and I went to university, so this is how old I am now, when the wall came down the Berlin Wall came down. So that was big news, and I was studying European studies. So I remember writing about that in my sort of final year sort of essay that was like a 3-hour long paper. So it's kind of an unusual way to study. And anyway, we had relationships with some of the former Eastern Bloc countries. People would come over. So I got to know this guy, and he said, we could really do with somebody like you who speaks other languages to work with our international department. So then I had a conversation with his professor back in Czechoslovakia called Vlastik Fiala, and about coming over, and they didn't have any money. I didn't have any money because I was a student. So I had to get a bus from London to Prague, which is 24 hours, and it got stuck in Germany or something. So we didn't arrive till midnight. I was absolutely knackered. And I got a train. And of course, because back then, the Czech currency was a soft currency, so you couldn't get it outside of Czechoslovakia. So I had Deutschmarks, but I'm paying for my train fare in Deutschmarks, not knowing if I'm being ripped off, because I didn't even know what the exchange rate was with Koruna. Czech crowns. And so anyway, I get my money back. I end up on this train, which is a 4-hour train journey to where they're based, which is Olomouc, which is in Moravia. So there's two provinces, Bohemia and Moravia. And Bohemia is where the pills and beer comes from, which is what people tend to know, and it's where Prague is, and then Moravia is in the south. So I arrive at 4 a.m. in the morning. But the bit that's really interesting, getting the train, and you know those trains which are separated out into little carriages, so you have 8 seats in each bit. I'm in one of those with 2 army officers who had massive Alsatians. I thought this could be the end for me, because there's nobody else here in the middle of the night with these big dogs. I mean, they didn't talk to me, I didn't talk to them, everything was fine, but it was a bit of one of those OMG moments, what am I doing? I'm sure your audience have been there. Anyway, I arrive at 4 a.m. and get picked up, and then have this experience for a whole year where I help them to create their first sort of interdisciplinary degree. So up to that point, they had like single honour degrees, say in history or biology or whatever, and dual honours, so in 2 subjects, but they never had a multidisciplinary degree, and they didn't know how to set one up. And European studies is a multidisciplinary degree. So I shared with them different models and ways of setting up a European studies degree programme. Taught some of their staff English, or to improve their English, obviously they had some English, and ran their international programs with European countries. So because I had French as well, so with some French universities and English universities. And I got to see parts of Poland and Hungary. So it was a really cool job. And it didn't really couldn't go anywhere. And I felt, I'm 22, 23, I have very little life experience. They probably need people who know much more than I do. So after a year, although they asked me to stay on and my contract was a year, I came back to the UK and had a period of time unemployed, living with my granny, who I was very close to, which was lovely, in Cornwall. My boyfriend at the time was based in Cumbria, which is the other end of the country. So we didn't see each other very often. And then I ended up getting a job at the University of Liverpool. And I was a director of European Liaison. I was the youngest director in the university at 23. But I really had a sort of passion for that, because it was about encouraging English people to spend a semester or a year abroad, which I thought was really important, because I'd spent most of my youth living in other countries, because I think it gives you different perspectives. You don't get so wedded to your right, because there's lots of ways that people look at things in different ways, and you see that if you're living in a different culture, the humour's different, the cultural references are different, all of those things. And I think that's an experience in itself, whether you study there or not. So I was very passionate about it and did that for about 5 years in different forms, but then realized that, well, there's nowhere to take this, in terms of a career. And I was quite ambitious in my 20s. So I started doing an MBA, and then I did work in a quango, which was sort of a voluntary organization, helping to give away money to deserving causes and stuff around that, and got into diversity, which was really interesting. And I took on the HR director of the organization because they didn't have unions, and he had a very particular way about him, let's say that. And one of my, I suppose, things is I hate people to be bullied or there to be any social injustice. And people often say about me, I'm very courageous. So I'll just stand up to any rhubarb, as I like to call it, that I see, and say, no, I'm not having that. And I'm not allowing you to treat people that way because it's not fair. So I was really passionate about that, and I knew he had it in for me. So I'm also quite good at the detail. So I'd read it in the thing that if they sponsored you, which they were paying for part of my MBA that I was still doing because I did it over 3 years, that there was kind of like a kind of golden handcuffs that they could hold on to you for a year after the funding ran out. So for the last year, I was doing studying what do you call it? Like your research project where you have to do primary research. And I did it on what's the future of management consultancy, because I wanted to get into consultancy. And I got the company of management consultants that were based in London to fund that module so that I wasn't reliant on my organization, so I could leave at any time after I finished. So that was quite handy. And then I got a job in PwC, and as a very sort of young, naive 30-something-year-old, I thought I'd made it because I was working for, one of the biggest organizations in the world and very well known and all of that, and absolutely hated it. I mean, not straight away, but it wasn't as it appeared from the outside, and it was very toxic and in many respects. And so after 11 years, I did stay for quite a long time, and I had 2 children and various other things, got married. I left because I realized, because I got very ill, I had sort of one of those turning point moments in life where I had to have an operation, and fortunately it wasn't too serious. But I'm in Poland, where all I could say was, can I have another beer, please, or something like that. So I'm in a hospital thinking, God, my husband was flown over. My children weren't allowed to visit me in the hospital. I had to meet them on the back stairs, which so it was horrific on lots of levels.
Wow.
And what I realized after that, and when I was able to process it, was this is not the organization for me, and I can't make it a spiritual place. And I was writing a book at the time on the relationship between business and spirituality. So I took a leap of faith. I didn't really know what I was going to do, but I got a redundancy package. I left. I took some time out to heal and be with my daughters. And then, I basically started my own business, and I did that from 2012 on and off. I still have it, but I had it for 6 years of that. I ran a consultancy with Kath, where we worked with CEOs and their boards, which was wonderful. And that's when I wrote Colorful Boardrooms, because we were both working with color. And when people say, how did you find color? I would say, well, color or your purpose finds you, really. And I loved it. And I've worked with it for over 12 years now. And then that came to an end for personal reasons for Kath, because her husband was dying. So I had to take a step back to be a carer. And I had 5 years on my own. But about 3 years after that, I really got the call to set up the Foundation of Colours, which I'm now involved in, and it was established in 2022 with 3 other co-founders, Kath, who I'd worked with before, Elaine, and Tadeja, who is from Slovenia. So it's an international organisation, and we all have different strengths. But I think the thing that unites us really is that we're all, whilst we're very interested in the spiritual and have worked in that way and developed ourselves over the years, we've also worked at a very high level in business, as directors of different things and what have you. So we act like a bridging between the spiritual and the material, if you like, or spirituality and business. And actually, so when we're in businesses, it's all about practical wisdom, so how can you make your teams work more effectively? But what underpins that is properly spiritual principles and laws. So in our book, Colorful Boardrooms, there are 8 spiritual principles that inform our work. And it's part of what we teach when we work with organizations. And so that all started, and the last thing I'll say, because I feel I've been talking a long time, but it's just to give you a sense of who I am, is that this, for a long time, because we were running the foundation alongside our own businesses and still are to some extent, it was just sitting in the backwaters. We did a soft launch that was very, effective. We got, it was online, we got about 60 people to that, when we looked at water and consciousness and the relationship between them, because there's a link to colour, because obviously the bottles have water and oil in them, which is what allows you, although they look like the same colours, you can have 2 different colours, and it allows the separation between them. We got this idea last year that actually, wouldn't it be great to celebrate the International Colour Day? And the International Colour Day every year is on March the 21st. And so we got this idea to run a 3-day conference summit online, which is completely free. So people can register, they don't pay a thing, and they get access to all these amazing talks and different angles on colour. And there's different themes. So there's the Red Day, which is really about the material and connecting to that. So we've got someone who's the person that's opening it is talking about birth trauma. And we've all had that, either because we've had a difficult birth, or maybe we didn't have a great connection with our mother, or what have you. So there's, everyone's been born. So it's effectively that, impacts all of us. And then there's somebody else talking about astrology and the relationship with colour. Someone else is talking about money and net worth and self-worth. And we also have someone talking about intimacy and how to have a great sexual relationship, even if you've been in one, a marriage or a relationship for a very long time, and it can change. So that's a really interesting day. And then the day 2 is about the mind. So Kath and I are doing a talk on power at play. So looking at the power dynamic in organizations and relationships. There's somebody else talking about branding and color and how that impacts who you are and how you look. And we're going to have something else on the psychological dimension of color, and also a couple of people talking about loss and grief, and not just in terms of losing, say, a parent or something like that. You could have a loss of identity if you change job, or you lose your job and you don't have a job, or you lose a partner, because you get divorced. We all experience different loss, and we're not very good as a society at dealing with grief. So I think that's going to be an interesting talk. And then day 3, the Blue Day, is all about spirit and spiritual nature of our work. It's about creativity and flow. So we've got someone talking about sacred communications. We've got someone else talking about living in flow. Someone else who is blind, who I trained in the colour system. She's going to talk about how she feels the energy of colour, because obviously she can't really see it. So, and a really interesting and, mixed thing. So I'm really excited about that, because I think part of the mission behind the foundation is to give more people access to the power of colour.
I love all that. It's like, I'm like, oh, this is great.
Where do we go now?
And this is amazing, and so many things to talk about. But so to close the thought on this initiative, that's and the webpage is going to be on the show notes, but it's www.foundationofcolors.com. That's where people can find more information about these 3
amazing days. If they want to know about the summit, the easiest one, and I can obviously send it to you afterwards, is actually www.FOC Summit, so FOC for Foundation of Colours, Summit, SUMMIT.com. And that has all the details. And as I say, it's basically free, unless people think, actually, do you know what, I want to have lifetime access to the material. Then there's a VIP bundle with lots of goodies. So we're doing, like Kath and I are doing, an exclusive podcast on how to tap into your brilliance, which goes only to the people that get the VIP package. So there's stuff like that as well.
I love it. I love it. So I'd love to talk a little bit more about what does, the relationship between business and spirituality, because I think, I mean, for what you described, that's how you got involved in this. And everything you say, like, it makes sense to me. And I had the opportunity to do through Sounds True, the inner MBA, which I love. It
Oh,
was
wow.
was a 9 months course about
Yeah.
the inner and outer game and how we bring our outer game, and we focus so much on the outer things and the outer knowledge. And then that's why it's called the inner MBA, because it's all about, the inner game and alignment and all these things that you're talking from a different angle, but that all intersect.
No, it's all the same. So we always thought, as you said in the intro, it's about elevating consciousness. So we would say color offers a roadmap to consciousness, but it's not the only route. It might not suit people, that's fine. There's other ways, but the ultimate game is raising levels of consciousness. Well, that's what I would argue.
A
Anyway.
roadmap to consciousness. And so where and you mentioned about your experience in the corporate world, and I've heard so many people saying I had this great job. I've heard the golden handcuffs expression many times. Especially here in the US. Unfortunately, the system is really good at doing that. And the fact that, in my opinion, this is a more individualistic society, which has not a criticism. It's just a way of being. And let's say Europe, as an Italian, I know the family, the collective is more present. So even when you have that materialistic, let's say, enticement, sometimes your family doesn't get you there because you have Sunday lunches, Sunday dinners. And so the system, you might not get so separated from the collective. And after 28 years in the US, I can say that I feel it here, like the drag to be on your own, being on this more pursuit of the American dream, which is why this country is a great country. It's the only country that can sell the American dream and really making it big. But with that comes sacrifice to the spiritual side, I think.
Well, I think also this is obviously a perspective. It's not, I don't believe there's any absolute truth. I think there's an element of truth in everything that everyone says. And I would say that why people pursue the American dream, if you will, or that, that individualistic path actually comes from a place of scarcity and lack. It's like, I have to make all this money to, get my health insurance, if you're paying for private health insurance, or to support my children, or whatever the excuse is or reason. And it's like, that comes back to what you were saying yourself about the inner MBA. It's still focusing on the outside. And abundance really is about recognizing that we are both divine and human, which means that we can be absolute shits and horrible and, treat people really badly because we're driven by, I say, the wounded child, which means that part of ourselves when we were children. So this is the psychology bit, I suppose, that something happened. We never were able to process it then because we didn't have the tools to process it. So we find a way to deal with it, but it's still sat there. It's hurting. So then we go into an organization or a situation with other people where they inadvertently often trigger that, and we overreact or we get angry or whatever happens, because we haven't processed that pain from before. And that's like, so when you're talking about power, which I was saying, I'm doing this talk on power, that's why you get all these toxic power environments, because essentially it's a bunch of wounded children all acting out and playing out their particular thing, and people getting more and more angry, and it gets more vicious, and so on and so on. And it's that ability to process what color helps you to do. And it's why, although I've got loads of other tools in my kit bag and, I've NLP trained, etc., and what have you, I always come back to color because I found it the most effective way for people to go to that unconscious part of themselves and see what's really going on and bring it into the conscious so that they can choose a different way and sort of break that sort of what they've probably recognized in themselves is that repetitive pattern of, oh yeah, I often do this. I don't really know why. And they don't know how to stop it. So it helps them to make those shifts.
Very interesting. And it's not the first time that you hear something like, like something happened in childhood and we don't recognize that it was even traumatizing or that we, like feel like I know that I have an older brother and my dad always took him to the office and I always wanted to go. And at some points they would sneak on me and like leave me behind. And I, through all these podcasts and psychology, like I realized like sometimes I have a fear of missing out. And I think it comes from that, like I was
And the fact that you weren't treated equally, it's like I still remember my dad at 16 saying, "You'll never be a leader." And I took it seriously, because I wasn't like my brother, but actually I know whether or not they acknowledge it, it doesn't matter to me now because I know I'm very intelligent and I'm bright and articulate and stuff like that. But for years, I needed to hear it from them and I never did. Because like, oh, your brother, he's really clever. He's going to go here. He's going to do this and blah, blah, blah. And he has done very well. And it was, that inability to celebrate those differences and go, yeah, I might not be witty or funny in that way, but I have other things to offer.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that's so true. And in our case, we now all work together. They eventually took me to the office, and now I work for my dad. But they
about that, like
like
full circle.
The whole full circle. My brother, my sister, me, my sister-in-law, we all in the family business. But
that's amazing.
And we have a great working relationship. Like people ask how, and so my dad, to his credit, was he's very good at it. He's 91, he still works, but like he was very good at letting us know what we're good at and empowering us. So I think that's one of the secrets. But to that point, when I was little, and I was not, too little, I'm not going to take you to the office, but I know I always go back to that. And sometimes in business, and you see others doing well and say, I'm going to be left behind or I need to do more. And I try to overcompensate what I'm doing.
Interesting.
So
so I'm going to ask you a question, right? I'm just going to move my head. Right, so there's those 3 bottles there. Oh, I always get, and then those there. Which is your favorite color? What's calling you without thinking? Which is the one?
It's hard because I like them all, but I think that the deep blue.
Okay, so what is it you love about the deep blue? What is it that you like about it?
It's kind of calming or stable. I don't know. I feel it gives me like a calm, like a stability, like a safety kind of thing.
So that would suggest to me that you're actually quite an intuitive woman. I don't know whether you use your intuition or not.
I do. That's why I'm doing podcasting. I don't know. After 5 years, I have no idea why I do it, but my intuition told me go for it. And then I get to meet amazing people like you.
So that's what that one is, part of what, there's lots of other things, but it's like there'll be something that's calling you. And it could also be actually you need to use your intuition more. So one of the things that color helps people with is to hone their intuitive intelligence, because intuition is like a muscle. And we know if we don't go to the gym, for example, we get flabby and we put on weight. We might look like a tomato or whatever it is, and it's the same with your intuition. If you don't trust it and use it and hone it, then you don't hear that voice inside of you, or those the universe is always giving us opportunities, little gentle nudges. That's the spiritual path, but they're so gentle sometimes we can miss them. So for example, I think there are probably many times when I could have left PwC all those years ago and I didn't. When I got really ill, it was like, you're not going to ignore this anymore. And so I was like, I've got to make that that shift now. So you do get the nudges, but if you do ignore them, you get the,
I
in
am a
your
big
face.
believer of that. The universe disrupts you when, after many tries and many to call your attention. Yes,
Yeah.
it's something I share a lot, many episodes ago, but since I talk about the podcast, and I always had this voice saying, do something more. Like, I like inspire connections. So people say, what motivates you? You say, no, I don't make money out of I get motivated by inspire connections. So to me, this is an inspired conversation,
Right.
and
That's it.
I get something out of it, and I'm going to go out of my way after this interview feeling better, feeling
That's
energetic.
it. Yeah.
And so, but I remember like having the second, the bad voice, I don't call it the saboteur or sabotage
Yeah.
voice, saying, you don't have time to do a podcast. No, 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 no. And so I go and I throw a coin
Yeah.
when I don't know, but mostly because I know as the coin is in the air, I know, the cliche, like, you know what you want it to be. The moment you are thinking of, please let it be this, that's
Yeah.
really your voice saying this is what you should do. So I got the
Yeah.
opposite. Like I said, no, you shouldn't do the podcast, because it was a course and you had to invest in it. And I took the credit card out and I went against what the coin said, but it's
Yeah.
almost like the intuition saying,
Yeah.
follow me,
Follow
not the
your
freaking
path.
coin.
Yeah. So what
And
you
it's
have to be aware of though, so this is the flip side. So it's like it's kind of color is quite Jungian. That's the psychology bit. There's the light and the shadow. So in your case,
hard.
I would say you probably have quite a lot of masculine energy, right? We all have both, by the way, both have feminine and masculine energy, but there'll be one that's more dominant than the other. You've probably got quite a lot of masculine energy because you had to push yourself out there to be noticed by your dad, for example. And so that's your go-to place. But the downside of that is that you can become, get into that place with control and power that isn't always helpful. So it's about keep softening, listening to that intuitive nudge and knowingness, and then all of life will open up to you like a flower.
I love this. Look, I'm getting even like wisdom out of this. But I love like all that you are bringing onto the table, because I'm a believer that we need to pay attention to these things, and that these um, patterns that we take along the road, they seem unimportant, but they're not. And just in discovering that, like just what you share with me, is like, that's good information. Let me take it and assimilate it and become aware because yes, I mean, anybody that knows me will know I'm controlling. Yes, I am an A-type personality. I try to tame it down, but
So that's so if you and I were working together, that's the work we would do to help you, because you're aware of your patterns. So back to what I was saying before, you know yourself because you've done that work already, because you care and you want to, keep growing and expanding. But sometimes you get a bit stuck and frustrated, or you fall back into the pattern. And the reason color is so powerful, it's not only that because you choose unconsciously what you need and all of that, and then you get the nudges, but then you can work with the bottles. So we have like a distributor in the US, so I wouldn't necessarily send it from here. I get her to send it to you if, we're working with bottles and what have you. But then you can meditate with the bottle, you can massage some of the oil into your skin. Ultimately, you pour the whole lot in a bath. And the reason you do that is it's like epigenetics, right? So you're sitting in this gorgeous, luxurious, oily, colourful bath, and all the good energy from that bottle, because it's been specially curated, it's got essential oils in as well, it's gone through crystals, goes into your cells. And any sort of negative self-doubt, whatever, energy comes out. And then when you get out the bath, you pull the plug out and it goes down the plug hole. So what you're doing is helping to raise your vibration quite literally through working with a bottle. And that's why it's so powerful, because you're not just having a coach who, listens to you, asks you great questions, but you're also having a visual connection with the color. Then it's kinesthetic because you work with the bottle or the essence, an olfactory because there's a smell. So it's working on all these other senses as well, which is why I think it's so much more powerful, say, than, just regular coaching.
I love that. I can even imagine, I can even see myself already flushing
Yeah,
that and like having
that's
that. So
it.
that's good. That's great. And I love, and I know a lot of your work. I mean, I think it's great to go from, let's say, this individual exercise we just
Yes,
did, which
sure.
is helpful, and I'm grateful for it. I got an extra bonus here, but about raising the collective consciousness. I would love to talk to you about more of that, because we know, like, even the experience we went through COVID, I think a lot of people were saying this is an experience that is raising, or awareness. There was a moment there that we were talking about many things that we don't normally talk about:
Yeah.
well-being, mental well-being, how we help each other. What
Mm.
work do you think we need to do as a collective, or how can we get there? I mean, obviously, Foundation of Colors and so many initiatives can help us, but it's a big task. So, what's your thought? What are your thoughts on that?
So I think I'm not dodging the question, but I would say the only work that any of us need to do is to work on ourselves. And then, so as you hear, so let's go back to you for a second. So as you work on your controlling tendencies, which you're aware of it, but you keep working on and that you shift that and you surrender to what is, and you let go of the need for control, then actually not only are you shifting and raising your own vibration, but if you think of consciousness as a series of fractals. So if you take, I think it's a romesco cauliflower or broccoli, it's sort of got, they're like fractals, but in a vegetable. You're changing the links. If it's like a hologram, you're changing the links and you're strengthening things and you're healing up bits for the collective. So the work because people often go, oh, working on ourselves, that's so selfish. It's this, it's the other, but that's bullshit. Because as we work on ourselves, as we can step into that place, step into our power, we enable others to step into theirs. So then when somebody does really well, we can genuinely say, wow, that's really great. Well done, Leticia, or whoever, fantastic, you've got that new piece of business, rather than go, oh, she's got that business, that means I won't get any, which is the typical response, oh, that's really unfair. But actually that just pulls our vibration down. So it's that whole switch, you see. So that's why I would say, even when you're working with an organization, you might be working with a team and you can do team coaching and all of this good stuff. But ultimately, an organization is made up of a bunch of people, of individuals with their own desires, needs, wants, what have you. So it's kind of like we need to tap into that. But, as we do that work individually, and as Rumi said, we're walking each other home. And that's all we have to do, is to remember that we're spiritual beings having a human experience, as the Chardin said, or as I like to say, we're the universe in a body. So we've got that
Mm.
divine spark, and it's helping everyone to see that for themselves. Yes, you are part of the divine. Yes, you can carry on, and this isn't you, but for example, playing that victim story, poor me, this happened, that happened. But actually, if you dig into anyone's past deep enough, everyone's had shit in their life. Everyone's had rhubarb. But the difference is how we look at that. Are we going to get caught up in the drama of it? In which case, we're going to get into that really low, difficult, hard space, and then more shit comes in, because we're then saying to the universe, oh, well, yeah, this is awful, it's terrible, I haven't got any money, I don't want any money, just keep me in this place of lack. Or we can go, this is a bit challenging, okay, not do false positivity, because that's equally unhelpful, really. So feel all the feels and be with it. So you wouldn't know this today, but 2 nights ago I had an awful experience, and 3 things happened in a row. So I do a lot of rowing as a way of keeping fit, because I have osteopenia and I don't want to get osteoporosis. So something happened in that world, and it was very, very painful, and came back feeling really low. Then someone in my family called me the C word and started attacking me. So that was also really awful. Then I'd got a jumper from my husband for Valentine's Day, beautiful merino wool jumper, and it had a hole in it. So I was like,
Oh,
seriously,
oh my
I
God. Yeah.
really lost it, because I was just
Yeah.
like, everywhere it's going wrong.
Hmm.
And so I felt really, really down that evening, a few tears. also a few tears yesterday, but I just allowed myself to release the emotion. So it's not about feeling the emotion, but we don't have to get caught in the story of it or the drama of it. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
I need to process this. It's not very nice. It's not personal. It's not about, this other individual who said all these things at rowing. It's not about me. It's their shit. It's their stuff that they're working through. I don't have to get attached to that. And if I trust myself, so this year in color terms, I'll share a link with you, which will be interesting for you. I wouldn't necessarily share it with your group, but it's Insights into 2025, and it's a 55-minute presentation I did. And in color terms, we're in a year of faith. So that means we will be tested many, many times during the year. Are we going to go back to that place? Oh, no, it's not working. We'll go, oh, okay, this is just another test, right? Yeah. So already, less than 2 days later, I think I've got a way through with the rowing. And it's going to be a big change, but actually it's probably a really good thing. So it's always like, okay, this has happened, but that's something better's around the corner. So I'm going to feel that sadness around being betrayed and etc., but I'm not going to attach to it, and I'm not going to add extra suffering to it, because suffering's so last century. There's no need to suffer anymore.
I love that. And I have to say, I totally agree. I'm a big fan of Pema Chodron, and I've done some of her courses, and she's big.
Yeah.
Like that was to me a transformational moment where you say there's two ways this can go.
Arrows, yeah.
This is the road of suffering, as you described, and this is just what it is, and be with it, and don't attach to the stories. And people around me, they know, like, okay, but that's a story we're telling. And I used to do it all the time, and sometimes catch
and the
myself.
interpretation, that must mean this, and right. And my thing, you see, and this is so some of my shadow I'll share, to be vulnerable too, is when I am hurt, I'm going, right, I'm going to get you, you bastard. I'm really going to make you pay. I'm going to play this card, and you're going to wish you weren't ever freaking born. And I know when I hear that voice, that's my ego and that masculine side in me, which is why we're so connected, because I have a lot of masculine in me going, I'm going to protect the delicate feminine, so you don't get hurt anymore. But actually, I need to go, okay, you have your moment, and now we're going to let that go. Because if you follow that through, the only person that's going to get hurt, Kate, is you. Because at the end of the day, maybe they were wrong, and maybe they are awful, or it was painful, but we don't have to react in that way. Responsibility is the ability to respond.
Wow, that's very powerful. It's all good, because this is great reminder, because you do the practice, and you see how many times it arises. And then if you are in a situation where the environment, like my family lives in Venezuela, and for 25 years, we've had the worst situation where everything, it's like, so talk about the universe trying to, I have no control. Like if I know, is I have no control over nothing, because it's just being repeated. And maybe that is the test, right? Like you're going to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
No matter how hard you work, no matter what you do, no matter how many times you say, I'm going to try a different way, nothing is going to potentially be impacted by what you are doing, because you really don't control it. It's about the rest. But I can still keep being me and all these things, but the amount of storytelling that surround us, to your point, like now when you hear it, because now you're aware of it, you see it everywhere. You see it,
and the thing is, the voice that you're hearing is angry or aggressive. That is just the ego, because we all have one. However spiritually mature we are, we all have the capacity to go back to that, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth.
Or the victim. It shows up all the time, right? Everybody's out to get me. Everybody's,
or the martyr. I do this all for you, and nobody recognizes me, and it's awful. Well, recognize yourself, you pillock. I mean, it's like stop waiting for someone else to do it, because they're not going to. Then if you want to make the dinner for everyone, great. If you don't.
Yeah, it's exciting work, discovering one's inner self and how we go. So I love having you on the show. Thank you for reaching out and highlight. I love, this is the part where the connections to people we know, and then you have this conversation, and you're talking to people that are kind of aligned on the same journey, and then all of a sudden it doesn't feel lonely anymore. And that I
That's
think
right.
is incredibly powerful. So, Kate, I know we've spoken about a lot of things, the summit. Is there anything else that I haven't asked about that you want to highlight for the audience? I always give the opportunity to highlight anything else that you're working that is exciting you.
I will tell you what's exciting me. It's not really about the foundation, but as I'm the little plug. So I'm very excited because 3 years ago in November 2022, I ran a retreat for women in Namibia. And
Ooh.
I am going to be running a retreat through my own business in California in
Ooh.
September. So we've still got 2 or 3 places. So if anyone's interested, maybe you would be interested, Leticia. It'd be lovely to have
Maybe
you.
my birthday, so maybe my birthday gift to myself would be joining.
Absolutely.
Well, you should definitely send a link, and it's all
I'll send
about
you a link because there's loads of
tell us a little
information.
bit more about it so that the
Yeah,
audience
so
can.
it's about trust and transformation because it's, we're in this year, as I said, about building our faith. So how do we, because when we say we don't trust somebody, or for example, when you get to the essence of that and you dig deep into that, at some level, we don't trust ourselves. So if we don't have complete self-trust, we can't really trust another person. So how do we get to that place? Yeah, that's kind of what we're
Great.
going to be looking at. But there's going to be lots of lovely little bits. So we'll be doing, I'm doing it with somebody who lives in California. So and it's in Mount Shasta. So it's a very beautiful, very
Yes.
special place. I've never been there. I'm really excited. And we're going to be there for the 9/9 portal, which will be amazing. So it's going to be a time when the lots of energy downloads or light codes, whatever you want to call, will be coming down. So that day we'll be sort of maybe out with the sort of Tibetan bells, etc., on the mountain for that day. But the other days there's going to be teachings and workshops, 2 workshops a day.
Awesome.
So it's going to
Oh,
be
that's great.
lovely.
We'll definitely will have it on the day. As you say, there's enough time for people to think about it. It sounds
Yeah.
lovely. And everything you say, I mean, that's definitely I'm encouraged by seeing the colors, and I'm sure I will see them all differently after this
Yeah.
interview. And my last question of every episode is, besides colors, Kate, what other thing makes you tick when you need to get resourced and connected?
So I'm really lucky. About 4 years ago in lockdown, weirdly, my daughters, who are 18 and 17 now, had asked for many years for a dog, but we'd had a hamster before. So I was well aware that whilst they loved the idea of having it, yes, yes, mum, we're going to walk the dog, I knew who would become the main carer for the dog, and that would be me. Unfortunately, because I work at home a lot, that's not a big deal. But Benji is incredible. He's a working cocker spaniel, so he's as mad as a bag of frogs. He's got loads and loads of energy, and ideally would love to walk 10 miles a day. He doesn't get a 10-mile walk a day because of what's work, but he does get walked every day. But he always, like when I was upset the other day, he wanted to give me a cuddle. He knows when, my mood, what my mood is. He loves you no matter what, even if you've told him off because he's jumping up too much or trying to steal, beg for food or whatever. He always loves you, whatever. You come to the door, he greets you at the door. And it reminds me of when my girls were really small, 3 and 4, and I come to the door and be, Mommy, Mommy, and they'd run, and who would get the first cuddle? And it's just like, oh, so lovely. So it's like having a child again. He turned 4 on Monday, on the 10th of February.
Oh,
And
wow.
basically what I did, it's a bit sad, but I thought it was quite sweet, really. I made him dog-friendly cupcakes.
Oh, wow.
And,
Okay,
and I
that's
got one out.
unconditional love on both ways then.
Absolutely. And I got a piece of his like dog treat, which looked a bit like a candle, shoved it in the top. And then I can, if you've got your WhatsApp or you give it to me, I'll send it to you. But I took a little mini video when I made
Oh,
him sit there, when I put
that's
the cupcake in his bowl, and then I got him to look at me and I sang him happy birthday. He looks very quizzical. So he doesn't really understand what I'm saying. And then when I let him go free, he just couldn't wait to eat it all. what I did, but just to say, it works both ways. We have all of, when it's our birthdays, people remember us, get us a present and what have you. So we did a present, but he's had 16, well, he hasn't finished them all yet, but I ended up making him 16 cupcakes. So he's been eating them through the week.
Oh, good. Wow. He's having a treat. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah, sorry, I think my daughter's just come in the background there.
That's okay. It's all about, as you say, unconditional love, because it sounds to me that's what makes you tick. And I love this interview and conversation, Kate. So thank you for being part of Back to Basics.
No, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a real honor and a privilege to share the space with you and get to know you as well, Leticia. I feel I'm starting to get to know you. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. That's great. The beginning of a good connection. Yes. And to all of you out there, thank you for following Back to Basics. And I hope you enjoy your colors and check out the Foundation of Colors and see what resonates. Thank you. And until the next episode of Back to Basics.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Back to Basics. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. If you haven't yet, subscribe, rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcast or any of your favorite streaming platforms. This is the best gift you can give us. Join me next week for another Back to Basics conversation. And if you want to find out about other exciting things I'm working on, visit leticialatino.com. Thank you, and until the next time.